first up, we have Kenvue and AudienceProject to deliver a presentation for you guys. So if you want to come up to the stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for everybody here today. Really excited to introduce Neil in a moment, but for anybody that isn't familiar with AudienceProject, we're a SaaS business focused predominantly in the measurement space, helping advertisers get a view on deduplicated reach and frequency across key marketing channels, including Meta, YouTube, Amazon, Netflix, Disney+, linear TV, online video, and CTV. It's my great pleasure to welcome Neil. And we don't have long, so Neil, over to you. A bit of an intro, who you are, your role, and Kenvue would be great.
Yeah, so I'm the digital media director at Kenvue. I've been with the business about 10.5 years now. My team sort of splits into two functions, one which is around digital marketing, so website, CRM, search, the other side around everything media from commerce, traditional, everything outside of basically shopper in-store. And yeah, Kenvue, you may have heard them, you may not have heard them. So we are our own independent consumer health company, having split from Johnson & Johnson just under 2 years ago. Got lots of iconic brands like Listerine, Nicorette, Neutrogena. And although we've split and become this sort of independent consumer health company, it's our ambition to become the #1 pure play consumer health company in the world. And one of the things I think that's quite powerful about our brands, our purpose, is that we are trying to create more accessibility for healthcare, consumer healthcare, and try and allow people to realise the power of extraordinary care.
Thank you, and yeah, I mean, these are all category-leading brands, household brands that I'm sure everybody's used at some point. Large team, advertising across so many different brands, so many different markets. I'm keen to kind of understand what you see as kind of advertisers' biggest challenges in the current climate.
Well, yeah, Mark, we look after my team's Northern Europe, so UK, Nordics and Ireland, and we cover over 60 brand market combinations, right? So with that, there's a lot to cover. And from a consumer perspective as well, I think one of the biggest challenges, it probably applies to everybody, is just the current fragmentation, right, with all the different media channels and the complexity that's creating for advertisers, particularly ones like ours, where we've got so many different brands. The consumer behavior is so different. We target pretty much everybody, right? Our portfolio touches lives of probably everyone in this room. So, you know, we see consumers a lot more distracted these days. They're consuming media in a lot of different ways. The proliferation of channels has just become like really hard to keep up with. And so understanding how you need to best engage with consumers that's relevant in all the different spaces across all our markets is just quite challenging. And then with that then becomes the challenges we have across measurement. So, you know, as, again, many of you can probably testify to in the room, the complexity of having like equitable measurement across all different channels has been, I think, a lot harder and a lot more difficult to get to grips with. We've had benefits from CPG perspective, where obviously retail media having more access to short-term sales data has really helped. But ultimately, you know, the complexity of having equitable measurement across channels, even if I look at something like influence, where you know it's become a big, you know, obviously a new channel, but how do you really measure like the reach you're having across people that are creating content that might go viral, might not go viral, and the investment decisions you need to then make behind that. So that's another complexity we've had. And then the other one I would say is just around the regulatory framework that we operate within. So we have quite a distinct or unique, I would say, portfolio of brands. We have our skincare brands like Neutrogena and Aveeno, but we've also got our self-care part of the business, which has medicinal products, medicines. And with that comes a lot of regulatory tension in terms of how we can, the types of messages that we can serve to consumers, the way that we use data, the interpretation of sensitive data by different platforms, by different even like local regulations, and not being able to create a one-size-fits-all approach across our brands, our markets, is another challenge as well. And then if you put that all together, it's a big job to do.
Bit of a headache. It seems natural to focus in on kind of channel fragmentation and measurement. I guess the two are quite closely aligned. The more opportunity you have to spend your marketing dollars across more and more platforms, the more of an issue measurement becomes, as I think you alluded to. When thinking about measurement specifically, kind of what are your kind of biggest priorities at Kenvue?
I sort of alluded to it being equitable. I think one of the things that we've really noticed, particularly in the last few years, is just the different data sources that are available in the market, right? Whether you're looking at planning tools that we use for our agency to understand what the reach is across different platforms, and reach is like a really, really big focus for us as a business as we look to grow household penetration. But then you've got delivery through the platforms. You know, all the tech platforms, they'll give you a different answer to what you then plan. And then you've got partners like yourselves that then give you a different result again, right? But I think it's finding a way of building all of these things together and finding what like the sweet spot is, and not necessarily just using one data point to then drive all of your decisions, because ultimately it will give you different outcomes. So I think finding what the right balance is between all those different outcomes or outputs is a really, I think it's what we're trying to do anyway.
Yeah, and for context, Kenvue and AudienceProject have worked together now for probably about 7 or 8 months, and I think that was kind of one of your key focuses when you started working with AudienceProject. And Neil was very open to say that actually there's lots of data at their disposal, but actually finding data that you can trust and which data needs to be kind of taken with a pinch of salt is kind of part of your kind of journey, and kind of capturing as much data as you can, but also kind of understanding what data you can trust was a key priority. So there's no such thing as perfect, is what we're saying. But if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling the room perhaps what led you to AudienceProject specifically.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're obviously a CPG, FMCG company, and for those that have similar brands to us, probably many of you are working to the same sort of principles as the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, Byron Sharp, how brands grow, and to do that you need to reach as many category buyers or people who are likely to buy into the category as possible to drive household penetration. But to do that you need to have reach, and one of the things that we, I suppose, had a bit of a blind spot on is actually when we are delivering campaigns, what that cross-channel reach was and what the frequency was across those different platforms. And we saw as a big opportunity to try and drive more efficiency, because ultimately, if we're reaching the same person and we've already converted them, then we don't need to reach them again. We'll invest our money in finding new people into the category to try and drive that penetration. So the thing that AudienceProject particularly that we found, I suppose, easy and really suitable for us was how turnkey it was. Very established in the market. So I'm almost doing a sales pitch for you. But no, you know, you work with all the kind of key partners we work with, right? So actually having that view of where our reach and frequency was across all these different channels was really appealing to us.
Nice, and yeah, reach is where we specialise, of course. But you mentioned retail media almost at the beginning of this session, and I guess that has kind of led to advertisers, specifically in the CPG space, having another channel a bit closer to the consumer, where you're trying to understand which retail media partners are kind of driving sales for you, or where you should spend your retail media spend. If we take a look at kind of metrics kind of more granularly, what are you kind of looking at week to week, or potentially day to day? Probably more week to week.
I think it's day to day at the moment. So obviously I've mentioned reach, right? It's a really big objective of ours to try and get as many consumer products in as many consumer hands as possible. And to do that, we need to drive that household penetration, as I've just said, right? But it's not just all about doing that, because if you just focus on reach, you then have quite a lot of efficiency misses and opportunities you can go after. But at the same time, if you just want to optimize your campaigns to ROI, which we use media mix modeling, as I'm sure many companies here do, then you lose out on the opportunity to drive household penetration and get that extra reach as well. So it's really a bit of, I say they're the two focus areas, right? In terms of we need to reach as many people as possible, as efficiently as possible, and effectively as possible. But the other thing I think that's really changed the game, particularly for us over the last few years, and obviously retail media has been a hot topic for a long time now, certainly for a while, is it has given us much of a closer read to sales performance data. However, it's been easy to go down the alley of going, we're going to optimize towards ROAS, we're going to optimize towards sales data, because although that's great, you know, we're still trying to grow our brands. We're still trying to get awareness of our brands, particularly those that have low unaided brand awareness. Some of our brands don't, so it's easier to focus then on the penetration metrics. But, you know, retail media in particular, whilst it's fantastic and whilst you get the sales data, how much of that is truly incremental? right? How much of that would you just convert it anyway, and all you're doing is you're using your ad spend to actually erode your margin. So those are the kind of things we have to be really mindful of. Of course, we want to reach as many people as possible, as effectively as possible, but we want to be able to track the sales. I suppose the same as everybody in this room, but I think it's just easy to be really blindsided if you just go really single directionally.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's a pertinent point, because the rise of retail media has meant that there's even more fragmentation when it comes to kind of not just where you're spending channel-wise, but where you're spending across the funnel. No, thank you for sharing. Looking ahead now, if we were having a conversation in this time next year, what do you think we'd be talking about? What do you think is kind of the big lookout in the media world?
I think for our portfolio, well, I think retail media is just becoming part of what we're doing, right? And same for many companies who are CPG. But for me, if I look at our portfolio, particularly our skin portfolio, social commerce is a really interesting space at the moment. You know, we talked earlier about the change of consumer consumption in terms of the channels that they're engaging with. You know, social commerce in particular for, again, our skincare brands, Aveeno, Neutrogena, this is where they are. This is where the people who are buying into those categories and products are. This is where they are engaging with creators, right? And that's where they've got the biggest influence to then buy the products. And yeah, I mean, the growth of TikTok Shop obviously has been a small base, but it's really high growth rate, right? Double digits. And social commerce is looking like it's going to grow at 30% CAGR over the next 5 years. So it's a really interesting space that I think we, although it's not a really high volume and value for us at the moment, I think if we don't get ahead of it quick enough, we'll fall behind. And particularly where we've got some of the smaller competitors who can be more agile than companies like Kenvue, make quicker decisions, take higher risks, I think we'll fall behind quite quickly, particularly as you're starting to see creators bring together that purchase with their content. And yeah, it's I think it's a really interesting avenue for advertisers as well, because I think it just adds lots of new inventory and format opportunities as well. That the whole buying through social. So I think staying on top of that's going to be really, really important over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're almost at time, if not bang on time. So Neil, thank you so much, and thank you for everybody joining us this morning. Yeah, we're around afterwards as well.